Thanks for tuning in to the Diaphragm Dynasty. I'm back with more controversial or a more controversial topic in R&B and in music, deciding who is the better group between New Edition and Boys to Men. Now, this might not be a fair comp because people will say, well, maybe the eras are a little bit different, but New Edition was only out maybe 7 years um, before Boys to Men because New Edition came out in 78 and Boys to Men was 1985. So it's only a 7 year difference there, which some might say is still a gap between it. But nevertheless, both iconic groups, both groups have contributed heavily to the R&B genre and to music in general and in general and music. So I'm going to do the comparison of these two because just for sakes, because I'm pretty sure people had this argument before about who's the better group. But when I did my research and looked into these groups, it wasn't even close to me, in my opinion, who were the better group. Now, Boys the Men are known for their strong vocals and for their ballads, their love ballads, and things like that. While New Edition is known for their pop hits and choreography and strong dance move, and they also had more individual star power than Boys to Men had. Boys to Men really didn't go solo. They did solo songs with people and things like that, separate from the group, but they really didn't release any projects solo. Opposed to New Edition, who had Johnny Gill, who was already solo before he entered the group, but he released projects after as well. Bobby Brown, Ralph Tresvant, even um, the spinoff of BBD and things like that. So they had a lot of individual star power that Boys to Men just didn't have, but Boys to Men didn't really need that because it was a collection. They were seen as more cohesive. We're not certain of what was behind the scenes. I believe there is a documentary and a movie coming along for Boys to Men, which it'll be interesting to see. But nevertheless, I think Boys to Men were a more cohesive, or at least viewed as a more cohesive unit than New Edition ever was. And it was unfortunate because they had a lot of great talent and they were very good together as well, especially the pre Johnny Gill New Edition. Um, but New Edition had 7 studio albums and Boys the Men had 15 studio albums, and it just shows you the productivity that Boys to Men had and the cohesiveness that they had to have that longevity in the game to put out double albums that New Edition had, and they started off later. They had, New Edition had a 7 year head start, and they still produced less records or released less records than Boys to Men did. So Boys to Men was definitely more active, and they were more, uh, they had more longevity. So, and New Edition, like I talked about before, they had changes in the group where they switched out Bobby Brown for Johnny Gill and things like that. Bobby Brown came back. So it was a lot of turmoil behind the scenes. They have a greater story for TV, I'll tell you that. But as far as music goes, Boys to Men has more productivity. And I think that's why I give them the nod of who was the better group. But when you think about the songs that Boys to Men had, Motown Philly, it's so hard to say goodbye. End of the road, let it snow, I'll make love to you, and on bended knees. And all of these songs that I just named were in a 3 year span. So when you think about how productive you can be in a certain amount of years, and I talked about this on my other podcast, Urban Scope Podcast, about Lil Wayne, about how you can put out so much product and then you become watered down. But Boys the Men seem to escape that narrative or escape those claims of being watered down during that 3 year period. And they was making guest appearances on Fresh Prince and all the kind of TV shows and things like that and movies. So they were still being able to keep it fresh because I believe they had a better team around them as well, to where they can still get the best writers and best producers and still, reinvest into their business so that it didn't get stale. They didn't rely on like one or two people. They relied on a team. And also, Boys to Men dropped one of the biggest anthems of all time, which is a song for Mama, which was on the Soul Food soundtrack. And this song is up there with the Dear Mama song that Tupac put out, that was recognized by Congress a few years back. But this song as well should have been up there too. It was very soulful. It crossed over, to other different genres and other different ethnicities and things like that. So that song was a huge song for them, and they were still able to put this song out. And I think it was '97. When it came out in '85. So they were still making hits even till, to present day. They still can go on tour and make money because of their catalog is ridiculous, especially like I talked about in that 3-year period. And New Edition never charted like Boys the Man. Boys the Man had a bunch of number one records, number one singles, and things like that. New Edition had like maybe one or two albums that charted number one. For the most part, they were in that mid, like 15, 10-ish, kind of range. So, both legendary groups. I don't want to say anything different, but for productivity sakes and for creativity sakes and for longevity and showing how to have that longevity is definitely Boys to Men over New Edition. Boys to Men over most groups. Most groups don't make it past a couple of albums because of the money and having to split the pie so many different ways. But for some reason, Boys to Men were able to be you know okay or content with what they had, even though they were putting out crazy amount of records and sales. So I'm pretty sure the money was still good, regardless if they had to split it 4 ways. But nevertheless, they figured it out that most groups haven't figured it out, even to the greatest groups of all time, whether it be Destiny's Child, TLC to some degree. But they stayed together. But unfortunately, one of the group members passed away and left. You had groups like you know No Limit Soldiers, Cash Money. All of these groups were amazing, but for some reason they just didn't stand the test of time through the money issues or creative issues and just behind the scene issues that we weren't really privy to until documentaries or movies come out about it, about their careers. But kudos to Boyz II Men for being able to do that despite not having household names. They were a household name as a group, but individually they just didn't have that household name a piece to them. But like I said before, both groups are legendary. But if you give me one group and you have to delete one, I'm definitely taking Boys to Men over New Edition. Tell me what your thoughts about this. And until next time, of course, I'll see you next time.